Gilbert Doctorow, welcome here. Good day to you, my friend. Is there serious debate in the Kremlin as we speak, or these days, over how to bring about an end to the special military operation? And if there is, what alternatives are being considered?
Let's start out for first premises. Russia is not a dictatorship. Russia is a democracy, a special democracy according to its own rules, but definitely a land where there is free debate on many issues. I don't mean sabotage, I mean free debate on which way to go. And a perfect example of this was the way an article that I wrote 3 days ago, published 3 days ago on my Substack account, Is Russia Losing the War? Was then a day later translated into Russian in complete text and put on one very respectable news outlet, that is Free Press, Svobodnaya Pechat, and Svobodnaya Pressa, and it was then copied by half a dozen other news outlets. And I was asking very seriously whether the points being made by major Western media like the Financial Times or Figaro, that Russia is indeed losing the war against Ukraine because of the drone factor, whether this doesn't have to be taken seriously and considered what it implies for the further actions by Mr. Putin and his team to bring in the objectives that they set out.
Let me just jump in for a minute, because the version that I have, which you were kind enough to send me, the title is Russia Losing the War? Was that the same title that was reproduced on all of these Russian websites?
Exactly. And in the introduction, the translation was done by this this first outlet that I mentioned in passing, the Svobodnaya Pressa. And then the introduction was that here is this Doctorow who's has a Substack account and is a serious person in the West. And what he's saying is not comfortable for us, but has to be considered. And what I was saying, as you understand, is that Russia is now facing a Ukraine that is being supplied with advanced drones of considerable damage, capability, and considerable range. And this accounts for both the strikes in Petersburg and Moscow, and accounts for what's happening in the field of battle in Donbass, where, as the Financial Times pointed out, taking information indeed from the Ukrainian observer, but never challenged by the Russians, that this May, the Russians captured only 130 square kilometers of Ukraine-occupied Donbass, which is 10 times less than a year ago. And the explanation being the very effective use of drones by the Ukrainians, who are supposedly a step ahead of the Russians, although the Western press does not touch at all the question of where these drones are coming from, other than Ukraine itself, when we know that the UK, Sweden, Denmark, and other countries are big suppliers of these most damaging drones.
Has the war, I'm trying to think of the right verb, transcended battles with troops and become a war of drones? And if it has, how many drone operators does it take to stop 500,000 troops? if you can give us those numbers. I think you can, because I've read your piece.
Yeah, this is a key factor. With 10,000 or 20,000 drone operators, Ukraine can hold off 500,000 Russian troops. The troops cannot concentrate. They have to move in twos or threes. They cannot have an impact on the open field. And that explains partly why the big Russian push is not on the open fields, but in taking a few key cities, Konstantinivka being the one most challenging right now, and that is the door to leading to the Dnieper River. So the nature of Ukraine's problem, that it was outmanned from the beginning, that it had very big loss of population of people who fled. Half the country left, and the army eligible males were the first to find shelter and leave, and those who were dragooned into the army were the first to desert. So in that sense, Ukraine was a big disadvantage in manpower and still is, except that manpower is no longer the decisive factor in which way the war goes that it was.
But we know from the lesson in Iran that you can't win a war by air power alone. The Russians must know this. They have to stop the drones, and they still have to have this inexorable march of troops. How close, if at all, Gilbert, is the Russian military to achieving a conclusion that would be satisfactory to the Kremlin?
Nowhere. The game has changed repeatedly. And let's not look at the past. Let's not look at February 2022. Let's look at where we are today. I have been challenged by some people who appear on your program with the, not me personally, but the notion that the Russians should be striking at Kyiv much harder, and perhaps should be striking at the factories that are supplying the drones to Ukraine in the UK, in Germany, and the other countries. They have said, and it's a reasonable argument, but what then? What happens after that? I turn it around and say to those who believe there will be a Russian victory and a capitulation by Ukraine, if the Russians reach the Dnieper and perhaps even capture Odessa, we say no, not at all. There is no reason for Ukraine to capitulate so long as Mr. Zelensky and his team stay in the saddle. And that is the key question. Is Russia ready to take the initiative and to destroy its enemies, to decapitate Ukraine? Or is Russia intending to fight this on for the next 10 years and probably lose against NATO?
All right, so back to my initial question. What are the parameters of the debate? Is there a debate going? Is this an academic debate involving scholars like you and similarly situated people in Russia, or is it a practical debate involving officials in the Kremlin, political, operational, intelligence, military, and President Putin's office itself?
Well, it's impossible to answer the question you've posed with respect to what's going on inside the Kremlin. By nature, anybody who would step out of line would have a very short career. These people are not saying they're yes men. No, they have appeared on television, as my colleague Ray McGovern has said on your show, and they have had televised discussion of problems that the army is facing, like lack of night vision devices, goggles, and so forth. But I say this is all political theater. It is a show to divert attention from the serious questions of where do you go from here, and where they should go from here, in my opinion, not just my opinion, is to attack and destroy the political leadership in Kyiv. The destruction of factories in Western Europe is really almost an irrelevancy. If Ukraine is destroyed as a military factor, Western Europe will just go back onto the rock from which it came. Western Europe cannot fight Russia directly, and that's why they need and want Ukraine.
Last week, President Putin gave a major address to newly minted, I'm going to use the Western terminology because I don't know what their rank is, the lowest level of commissioned officers. In the West, it would be second lieutenant. They all had just graduated from their training. There were hundreds of them there. It was a stylized, produced speech with captions in various languages, even with music in the background. And in that speech, he warned of the dangers of Western Europe. Why did he do that?
Well, Western Europe is preparing, as he was saying in the speech, preparing for an invasion or an attack on Russia by 2030. That is not anybody's surmise. It is openly stated by people like Merz and Macron. And I can say also that among Russian academics and military experts, there is a high appreciation of the ability of Western Europe to rise to the challenge and reindustrialize its military industry. Of course, there are many qualifications of that, because how you can conduct a conventional war today in the period of drones is an open question. So the preparations may be totally wasted considering where military art is today. But the notion that Western Europe is dead or dying is absolutely false. Western Europe is not dying. We have problems. We have a very poor performing economy, but it's not rolling over and dying. So
why the European bellicosity? Prime Minister Starmer is out. Chancellor Merz with his 18% approval rating is still there. President Macron with his comparable approval rating is still there. But why the van der Leyen? I guess she's got the job for life, but why the bellicosity?
We have 25 other countries, European countries, and to think that they are only following the dictates of the big three is wrong. Our prime minister in Belgium challenged the right of the big three to speak for Europe. And he is more outspoken than others, but I don't think he was saying anything that the other 24 members of the EU don't feel for themselves. Now, as to the significance of Starmer's departure, it is nil. He was not removed from office because of his position with respect to the war in Ukraine.
Right.
And there's no signal that his successor will do anything different. The Brits hate Russia. I mean, the political class in Britain hates Russia.
Right. Here's what Prime Minister, I almost called him President, Prime Minister Starmer did in the death throes of his tenure. This is from the Telegraph about 4 days ago. Britain tests long-range missiles to help Ukraine bomb Moscow. Experimental systems, each carrying a 250-kilogram warhead, could potentially reach Russian capital from Kyiv. I don't think this is propaganda. I think this is an accurate description of what happened. What is President Putin going to do about that?
Destroy Kyiv. There is senseless to go after Britain, to go after Denmark in the first order of things. That invites great risk and uncertainty, which, let's face it, the Russian leadership has a very low tolerance for risk. But it has no risk in utterly destroying the political class in Ukraine. And if it did that, then Europe is left with nothing. They can't send their boys to fight the Russians because the boys aren't there to do it. They are dependent on a proxy war, which is slightly phony. It has big injections of participation by Western Europe, but it's still, formally speaking, a proxy war. And that's what they want to fight. And if the proxy is gone, if Mr. Putin and company destroy the proxy, end of game.
All right.
And these missiles are useless.
What will NATO do if Putin and company attack the munitions plants in Britain, France, Germany, Sweden, or wherever else they may be? Obviously, humans will die. Obviously, civilian structures will be crushed, even if these missiles are accurate and aimed just at munitions plants. What will NATO do? Nothing?
Well, I think under international law, Russia would have a right to destroy those factories.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you.
So that question is off the table. The question is, what will they do? Nothing, because they can't do anything. That's why they speak about 2030, because it's a frank admission that if war occurred today, Europe would be finished the next day. They have no answer to Russia's missiles with conventional warheads. They have no answer to it. They cannot.
Does Vladimir Putin want to attack Europe, or does he just want them to stop helping Ukraine to attack Russia?
Well, I don't have a microphone under his pillow, so I can't answer that question with any certainty. I will only say that I have stopped listening to his speeches, including the one that you mentioned, and I only look at what he does. And what he's done is negligible. When I read earlier this week that the Russians have attacked for the nth time the hometown Kryvyi Rih, in Ukrainian, hometown of Zelensky, I said, my goodness, is this their response to the Ukrainian attack on the schoolgirls, to the Ukrainian attack daily on various civilian, not just infrastructure, but on civilians directly? This is pitiful as a response. I have to say that that the Russians are not alone in this. The Chinese are not any more risk takers than Mr. Putin is. So I don't want to single out Russia as being indecisive. Unfortunately, the two leaders of what's supposed to be the global South are both indecisive. And I'd like, while we're talking about it, the verities that most everybody shares and which I question, I'd like to raise another verity as being suspect, and that is the Chinese support for Russia. When I published this article about is Russia losing the war, suddenly from nowhere, the Chinese started reading my WordPress platform. I've had in the past maybe one Chinese researcher pick up my platforms and read it. I never had 33, 2 days in succession. And that is a clear sign that the only thing that interested them was an argument why Russia's losing the war.
Well,
things are not what they appear to be.
Here's the former BlackRock money man with the 18% approval rating, who's now the Chancellor of Germany, whom Colonel McGregor says is the most dangerous German chancellor since Hitler. Here he is saying Russia can't win. Chris?
Ukraine today finds itself in a new position of strength. Russia cannot win militarily, and moreover, its economy is in dire straits.
What does he gain by saying that?
He's trying to hold back the tide within Germany to say that he has a winning hand when he doesn't have a winning hand. The Russian economy is not in dire straits. That's utter nonsense. But the effectiveness of the drones is proven. And Russia is not manifestly winning this war as it was a year ago. And the cost in lives and in severely wounded Russian soldiers is much higher than it was a year ago.
When you were in St. Petersburg recently, did Ukrainian drones attack there while you were there?
No, not, oh, well, in the outskirts, yes, but without any noticeable, let me take it back. Of course, I was there during the period of the St. Petersburg Economic Forum. And as we all know, the Russian oil refinery or oil installation on Vasilyevsky Island was attacked and sent big plumes of black smoke into the sky the day before the opening of the forum. So in that respect, yes, they did hit St. Petersburg. But there was more. It's an infrastructure strike. It's not a terror strike against the population. Does
it produce terror, or do people say, ho hum, there's another drone, we'll repair what they destroyed?
No, they don't say that. That people are, what it does do is prompt people to say how weary they are of this war and it's time they got over. But it's not an argument for defeat or for accepting the Ukrainian terms or Western terms. It's an argument, on the contrary, for Vladimir Putin to get the damn thing over with by destroying Kyiv and the political leadership.
Okay, one last subject matter, Gilbert. I was just, because I was on set, ready to go on air when Secretary of State Rubio came up from Bahrain or Qatar. I'm not sure where he is. But anyway, and in one of the Q&As, he said the United States is ready to be the mediator again between Russia and Ukraine. Yesterday, when I was on the great game with our mutual friend, Dmitry Simes, he and even his colleagues who were questioning me, obviously translated from Russian to English and English to Russian, are of the view that the Kremlin is of the view that Trump, Rubio, and Vance are utterly untrustworthy, cannot be mediators, are co-belligerents in the war against Russia. Do you accept that view?
I accept it as being justified, but I'm not sure that it is guiding the Russian president in his actions. He would like to maintain a dialogue with Donald Trump for a variety of reasons, which are reasonable,
Right.
Although it has not produced anything of great value, it has so far kept Mr. Trump out of the clutches of the warmongers in Europe.
Well, Gilbert Doctorow, another fascinating conversation for which I am deeply grateful. Keep the articles coming. Thank you for your time. We'll look forward to seeing you next week, my friend.
Very good.
Thank you. All the best. And coming up later today at 2:00 this afternoon, the Golden Boy, Max Blumenthal. At 3 this afternoon, I don't know where he is, but we'll find him, Pepe Escobar. Tomorrow, Friday, of course, the Intelligence Community Roundtable at 4 in the afternoon. And bright and early tomorrow morning, we'll give you the time, Colonel Douglas McGregor, Judge Napolitano for Judging Freedom.